When wealth is lost, nothing is lost. When character is lost, something is lost. When health is lost, all is lost. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is COVID-19, fighting the global pandemic. Joining us this evening on the show are Dr. Muru Chandradasa, consultant child and adolescent psychiatrist, Ragama Teaching Hospital, Dr. Deepa Gamage, consultant epidemiologist, epidemiology unit, Ministry of Health, Professor Indika Karunathilaka, former president, Sri Lanka Medical Association, Dr. Ranjit Batuantudava, director, Health Promotion Bureau. Let's start off tonight's show with Professor Indika Karunathilaka, former president of the Sri Lanka Medical Association. Nice to have you back on the show, Professor, after some time. We're discussing about COVID-19, fighting this global pandemic. We're talking about a fourth wave now in Sri Lanka. We're talking about how difficult situation that we are in. Already we've heard Professor Malik Peris, who's a consultant virologist, have already said Sri Lanka will face dire consequences as a result of opening up the doors of the public health sector in Sri Lanka at the moment as well. What are your thoughts with regard to the government's decision to open the doors for the public sector and even opening up the provincial bus services as well as transportation services across the board? What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I mean, before I move into that, I'll say maybe a few words about what you mentioned about the current situation to put it in the context. You are correct in saying that we are facing a rather serious situation at the moment, a surge with increasing number of patients, and the information that we are getting from the hospitals is that the COVID hospitals the capacity is being gradually filled up, and there are more and more oxygen-dependent patients. The numbers are increasing, and the disease is transmitting rapidly. So at the moment, yes, it can be called as a serious situation. Whether it can be called a fourth wave, I think we'll discuss a little later also, because rather than trying to label, I think we need to understand what has really caused. Because when we just try to label this as a fourth wave, we forget the fact that the behaviors that has led to the current surge have started maybe a few months ago. And the spread of the disease and maybe emergence of new variants and the behaviors that has led to that, so on and so forth. Now, answering your question, whether it's a good idea to open up at this moment, and especially the transport, interprovincial transport officers, so on and so forth. Probably the reason that the government has taken that decision may be the economic reasons and the need to basically maintain the economy of the country, which is rather difficult situation at the moment. But having said that, I think we need to really exercise caution at this moment, because with the current situation, with the rapid spread and transmission, we have to really exercise the caution. So as citizens also we have our responsibility, and also maybe the employers, employees, all of them have responsibility. Even though the country is being opened up gradually, we have a responsibility to make sure that all the measures, the preventive measures, are followed. Even there is a requirement to attend in maybe 100%. I think this has to be thought about rationally and also worked out an efficient mechanism, how to get the maximum benefit or the maximum efficiency while maintaining the preventive, because current situation is definitely serious. And also, even though the vaccination has got about 10%, and the rate of vaccination at the moment is very commendable, and a lot of consignments are now rapidly appearing. But having said that, we are nowhere near the requirement for the herd immunity. So that means that we are still not protected.
Right. Professor, now, when you're talking about COVID-19, one of the core issues that we are facing right now is the spread of the Delta variant. The variant that is originated from India, which is known to be one of the most dangerous variants as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Why would the government go ahead and open the doors even for the public transportation services to be operative when we are talking about such a dangerous variant at the moment?
Yeah, Now again, when you discuss about variants, that is in a way that's something unavoidable. When an epidemic goes on for a long time, and especially when it is due to RNA viruses which are very much prone to mutations, the variants will be appearing, and some of the variants will prove to be more dangerous. So that is something, anyway it will happen. However, so the virus being mutated is beyond our control. But there's something that is within our control. That is our behavior, because this virus can only proliferate or increase in numbers only within the human body, and then transmit from one to other. And to mutate also, they have to survive. Therefore, the human behavior factor is there. In that case, I think there is something to consider, because if you take this Delta variant, at the moment we don't have the exact numbers of the prevalence, even though there are some research data is emerging. The data that is coming out shows that the transmissibility is high, much higher than it was. So definitely caution must be exercised, because of this very high transmissibility, caution must be exercised when it comes to the public transport and even working in office spaces also. So I think that factor has to be taken into consideration.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Indika Karunatilaka, former president of the Sri Lanka Medical Association. We now move our attention to Dr. Ranjit Batuwanturava, director of the Health Promotion Bureau. Dr. Batuwanturava, 5 weeks ago when you came on the show, I posed a question to you with regard to the arrival of the second dose of the vaccine. You said it will come in a few days from that time. However, we've now finally received the consignment of 540,000 AstraZeneca doses for those who were to be vaccinated for the second time. Now, my question to you is, now when we got this consignment comes under the tag name AstraZeneca. The first dose that we received from India was named COVID-Shield. Is it different?
Thank you very much for Shamia having me today. Yeah, it's a nomenclature. The names are given. You know, this started with Oxford University and the AstraZeneca company. So when they manufactured in India, they called it COVID-Shield. And when they manufactured in England or other places, they gave different names. So what we are getting now is what is manufactured in Japan, and its name is AstraZeneca. So you can consider they are more or less equal in the same family, same vaccine. But my belief is that to recognize between the countries of origin, there are different names.
So the composition in the doses are the same of that was manufactured in India to that was manufactured in Japan as well. There's no difference.
Absolutely, that's the understanding. But however, because it is two names, they are monitored by different names. I mean, if you look at the efficacy data and acceptance data around the world, you may see AstraZeneca higher up and COVID-Shield in a separate line, separately downstairs.
Now, Dr. Batuwanturava, now we heard a lot of experts came on the show before saying that mixing and matching vaccines may prove effective. Dr. Sandurwan Bandar, who was working at the MRI before, came on the show and said mixing and matching vaccines may be prudent given the efficacy rate. However, he got the AstraZeneca vaccine, COVID-Shield vaccine in the first instance, and then he got the Pfizer vaccine in the second instance. But just a few days ago, we've heard that he has tested positive for COVID-19 as well. It seems that even though you get the two doses, even though there is a mixing and matching is done, the threat of someone getting the virus is still there, is still prevalent, isn't it?
Yeah, when you look at the infection of this disease, there are three factors to consider. That's the human factor, this is the body, and the environment and the viral factors. So by this vaccinating and taking our antibody levels up, we change the body conditions to face it better and try to avoid the infection. And it basically depends on each and every individual's how his or her immunity system works and how optimally it responds. So even though it's the same vaccine, even though it's the same regime in two different persons, both two different persons may respond differently to the same disease, same virus. So in this one person may get it, one person may not get it.
So, Dr. Bhatwantudava, we've also heard certain countries restricting people with the Sinopharm vaccine to even enter their countries, respective countries. As a result of that, the government has already announced that those who are migrating or going for their higher education in countries that do not accept the Sinopharm vaccine as the first or the second dose can resort to either AstraZeneca, Moderna or Pfizer vaccines. If that is the case, why is the government going through a process to get the people of Sri Lanka vaccinated with the Sinopharm vaccination if it is less effective and not recognized globally?
I think the yardstick we are working with is the WHO pre-qualification. So as far as the country, as far as the health ministry is concerned, all vaccines which have received the basic yardstick measurement and approval from WHO will be treated equally. Yes, of course, there would be certain differences in the efficacy and effectiveness based on the countries the trials were carried out and the number of participants in the trials. That could differ. But as far as the Ministry of Health is concerned, our regulatory mechanism and the authorities are concerned, WHO pre-qualification and registration for emergency use is considered equal grounds.
Dr. Bhatwantudava, we now know in Sri Lanka, the airports are open. If you have got the 2 doses of the vaccine, you are only entitled to sit for a PCR test on arrival. And if you are cleared, you can return to your houses or homes and then engaged with the activities in terms of tourism or in terms of meeting friends or in terms of meeting anyone in particular. There is no restriction whatsoever. However, we are aware Sri Lankan Airlines recently, a few days ago, opened its doors to Moscow after 6 years. Sri Lankan Airlines direct flights have opened to Moscow. We are now looking at bringing down Russian foreigners to Sri Lanka in the next few weeks or next few months. However, in China, they've all detected that 12 provinces have been affected as a result of opening doors to Russian planes to arrive in their lands. So as a result of that, the virus is now rapidly spreading across 12 provinces in China. Do you think this is a prudent decision by the government?
I think when international travel and immigration things are considered in health aspect, we have the IHR, International Health Regulations 2005, WHO guideline and the regulations. So all the countries have to abide by that. And I believe that our country also did so by opening the airspace and airlines for that. So again, I believe it's each and every country may decide. Maybe Sri Lanka decided to go ahead with the regular standard IHR guidelines. And was it Russian plane which infected? I didn't read it, but I read it that in China they have traced down to the index cases to the cleaners of the airplanes.
That's right. From the aircraft that arrived from Russia.
Yeah. So this is a good point. I mean, it teaches us a good lesson also. Our people also should exercise more caution when handling these things. And what the advice we give to everybody, maybe to the day-to-day person who is going to the shop to buy essentials, and even maybe to the cleaning person. Everybody should be practicing their COVID preventive measures. I think that's the best advice we can give to our people here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ranjit Bhatwantudava, Director of the Health Promotion Bureau. We now move our attention to Dr. Deepa Gamage, Consultant Epidemiologist, Epidemiology Unit, Ministry of Health. Dr. Deepa, people are talking about steaming. People are talking about gargling. That is the best way to prevent getting COVID-19. How far is this claim true? Because even today I saw on social media that people have suggested that cutting pieces of lime and incorporating it to anything hot, maybe a hot glass of water or maybe a plain tea that you're having, just squeeze a bit of lime, it affects and boosts your immunity. Is there any truth to this? Gargling, steaming, adding lime, having immunity boosters, does it work?
First of all, I would say the immune boosting is by the vaccination. That is the main message. If anybody has not taken the vaccination, this is the time to get the vaccination. Regarding the other point that the gargling and the steaming. So if anybody is sick and not well and having some discomfort after getting the virus and then you get the virus, some people are asymptomatic, but some people are getting the disease. So if they get the disease means they are sick. So when they feel discomfort, if you do steaming and gargling, they will get some comfort. So otherwise it will not kill the virus, or there will not be any immunity boosting like taking some other things. But if somebody is getting lime, there is no harm because we know that we are using it. But regarding that particular disease or concerning the destroying the virus, I don't think that will have any scientifically proven effect. That of course we don't know. But for vaccination, yes, we know that there is a proven scientific evidence that it will boost up your immunity or develop the immunity.
So Dr. Deepa, there are ample evidence right now in Sri Lanka that those who have got both doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine dying as a result of COVID-19.
But based on our evidence, because all the death patients, we are collecting information. So majority, more than 80% were not vaccinated, maybe more than 90%, unvaccinated. Or unvaccinated, some people have got one dose of vaccination and not completed the second dose. So just by getting one dose, there will not be adequate protection. So this is the message that everybody should get both doses for the protection. And very few, maybe 3-4 people have got both doses and 2 weeks gone, and after that they have not developed adequate immunity and got the infection and died. So the message is out of the total 4,000 plus deaths, majority are unvaccinated. So vaccinated people have got only those who have got at least one dose or at the very beginning, at the very initial 2 weeks. So there is no evidence that both those who have got 2 doses and gone for 2 weeks after the final dose have died. There is no evidence like that.
Dr. Deepa, when we speak about COVID-19 and doing a PCR test, let's say someone gets exposed to someone who is infected with COVID-19, how many days must that person be on quarantine, and how many days after must he or she do a PCR test or even a rapid antigen test?
Yeah, it's like this, but we can give the general guidance by just talking like this. But our advice is they have to contact the nearest medical officer of health to get the best advice based on the situation. But if we know that the one person is already contacted with the infected person, then at least when the virus entered into another one person, it takes about 2 to 10 days to get the infection. So the best time, the average time is about 5 to 7 days.
5 to 7 days.
5 to 7 days.
So let's say they do a PCR test on the 5th day, and that PCR test comes negative. Then what must he or she do?
Still the person has to be quarantined for 14 days.
And keep on monitoring him?
Keep on monitoring. If they get any difficulties, they have to inform the medical officer of health or their general practitioner or the nearest hospital medical officers, get the medical advice. If not, they have to be there quarantined for 14 days and then need to undergo rapid antigen testing or the as instructed by the nearest medical officer of health. They have to undergo the PCR. Depending on that majority, now the test strategy is to after quarantine the rapid antigen.
Now, because Dr. Deepa, when you say about this 14 days incubation period, certain government hospitals release the patients after 10 days.
These are two different things. I am talking about the quarantine. Quarantine itself is an uninfected person. Those who are having a risk exposed to a patient, but we know that that person is not a patient, so we keep them under observation for 14 days, just thinking that they might develop the disease. So that is the quarantine process. Quarantine word is high-risk people keeping under observation.
Right.
But the patients, those who are admitting to a hospital, that means they have got the virus, they have got the disease, so the average time period developing the disease and not infective to others are after 7 days, 7 to 8 days. So 10 days means they have developed the disease, they will not spread the disease to others. So that is why they are releasing from 10 on the 10th day, but advised to be at home for until 14 days complete.
Very quickly, Dr. Gamage, do you think Sri Lanka has reduced the number of PCR tests conducted now? And that is why the numbers are somewhat low?
I can't accept that, because what has happened actually, PCR tests were limited in the country. The number of tests needs to be increased. So that has replaced the community contacts or the quarantine people released based on the rapid antigen. So another test also added. So it is not that tests have reduced and the cases have gone down. So another rapid antigen added to the PCR.
Right. So thank you very much, Dr. Deepa Gamage, consultant epidemiologist unit, Ministry of Health. We, of course, will have a lot of questions from the four of you. Before moving and opening the floor for questions from our journalists, I want to speak to Dr. Muru Chandradasa, consultant child and adolescent psychiatrist, Ragama Teaching Hospital. Dr. Muru, at the moment, we all are aware that schools have not had a clean streak as far as its opening is concerned. We've seen how it has happened. You've sporadically opened schools and then we had to close schools. You opened tuition classes, you had to close tuition classes. How has it affected students' mentality at the moment? Because we hear that right now A-level students are saying give them a few more months to prepare for the advanced level examination. How important is it for the government to start thinking about the mental aspect, the psychology of students who are in this island nation?
So we had the ordinary level exams in March. Just few weeks before the O-level exams, on the same day in the clinic, I saw two teenagers. One said that he has finished studying for the O-level exams. It's just few weeks away, and he is getting prepared for his A-levels because he has had individual classes at home. Both parents are professionals, so he has completed studying for the O-levels, just now waiting for the A-levels to begin. Another student, another teenager came and she said she has not seen her teacher for 1 year, not received a text message, not seen her in a video for 1 year duration. So even before the COVID, the economic disparities made differences to different student classes. But by the COVID, the disparity has been significantly broadened. So you have to understand that obviously in a pandemic like this, the risk of opening schools are going to remain. So many people ask, we want to develop Sri Lanka. What should we do? Can we do it in 1 year, 5 years? No, we can't do it in 5 years. We need 20, 30 years. How we develop this country? By developing the minds of our kids. To do that, we need the schools to be open. To say that, so people say, can't we complete the curriculum by doing online education? But the curriculum is not the important thing. Meeting your friends, smiling, connecting, teamwork, group work, those are the psychosocial development needs of a child. So without the schools being open, we are depriving them of this essential part for the personality development. So people ask what happens in the past. So when we go to other countries, people ask us, didn't you experience the armed conflict? Didn't you experience the youth uprising in the 70s and 80s and the tsunami? All these have been significant psychological trauma. Yes, people counted deaths, physical deaths, but the psychological trauma of that has remained in our society. So that is why even for minute things, we get so distressed and dysregulated. You can see a 5-minute news clip on a news channel at 7 o'clock can make ripples in the society just by one 5-minute news clip. So we have not healed ourselves. So the current generation of students who have deprived of school education for a significant period, we will see the effects in the decades to come.
Dr. Biru, you spoke about how important it is for students to engage with students, other students, their colleagues at school in order to improve their personality and all that and more. However, right now, one of the burning issues at the moment is the rural sector. The rural students in Sri Lanka don't even have access to basic internet facilities. Does this contribute also to their needs or wants in terms of postponing the A-level exams by another 3 months?
Definitely. So there are disparities of the requirement of students in each province. Some students want the exam to be held on the assumed date. Some people want it to be postponed. So there is not going to be a 100% justified decision for all. So because you have to go ahead with the exams, because if the exams are postponed further, obviously university entrance is going to get postponed, and we are going to lose valuable years of valuable years that can contribute to the development of the country. So already they are graduating from the universities around 25, 26, then it's going to be 27, 28. Those 2 years lost from a graduate to the country is going to be massive. So there's never going to be a 100% solution for everyone. So there need to be some discussion about that. So about internet access, some people say my son has not completed the curriculum for this exam. But apart from that, not being able to see your teacher is a role model. So we know in our society the role models are very important for the children's mental health. So when you don't see your teacher for 1 year, that's going to have a lasting impact on their personality development.
Right. So thank you very much, Dr. Meenu Chandradasa, consultant child and adolescent psychiatrist, Ragama Teaching Hospital. Before I open the floor for questions from our journalists, onto my immediate right is Nadim Majid, onto my immediate left is Deshan Konavala, as well as onto my far left is Disal Kapuge. We have a question from one of our viewers directed at Dr. Ranjit Bhatwantudava, Director of the Health Promotion Bureau. Right now, Doctor, one of the issues that kidney transplant patients are facing is from where do they get the vaccines? Because at the moment, based on the understanding of these patients, they are supposed to get the vaccines at a particular hospital in question. However, right now, there is no proper method to vaccinate these individuals in question who are kidney transplant patients. What is the government mechanism regarding this?
Initially we were doing vaccination based on high-risk areas and geographies. Now subsequently, right at the moment, all the districts in the country, the vaccine is available. So the Director General of Health Services had issued a circular to all the hospitals wherever these clinics are conducted. It may be high blood pressure clinics, or it may be diabetic clinics or kidney transplant clinics. When these patients visit their clinics in the respective hospitals, the hospitals to organize vaccination for these patients. So probably what I can say to that kidney transplant patient is, when you go to your next clinic visit to your hospital, please inquire from the hospital and from your clinic staff. They should be providing, the hospital should be providing them opportunity of getting vaccinated against COVID-19. This was the instruction issued to all the hospitals.
But they don't have to go to a vaccination center that has been operated by the security forces that are present to get their vaccination. You are saying they could get their vaccination when
they
they
should
go
be
to a
getting,
government
yes.
hospital and produce their clinical card and say, I am a kidney transplant patient, I want my second dose, and the hospital will make necessary arrangements.
You're referring to second dose of AstraZeneca, is
That's
it?
right.
No, there's a small issue because for the AstraZeneca second dose, wherever they were, I think Dr. Deepa also will complement this, because Epid Unit is the place where they issue the instructions for this. So let's get her to answer that one.
Yeah, okay. So, Dr. Deepa.
Yes, now for kidney transplant patients, dialysis patients and chronic kidney disease patients, already we have identified them and we have given the vaccination for them. So those who have from the government sector as well as in the private sector and also at district levels. Already vaccines issued and vaccination, they have identified and vaccination already being done. But through the consultant nephrologists, we have identified the patients and already that process has been done. If anybody is missed, this is the time, because continuously we are getting some information that some missed patients are there. So as Dr. Batuwan said, that through the clinics also we can provide the vaccination, but in any district, at any place, they can get through the MOHS even, they can get the vaccination. They don't have to wait in the queue and they will get the priority. For kidney patients, transplant patients and the dialysis patients, we have already done the vaccination for them.
Right. So let's start off with Disal.
Yes, Professor Indika, I'd like to ask you right off the bat. Now, we see this classification of waves being defined by the government and by the public at large, and it seems to revolve most around the lockdowns in the country. Like after the third wave specifically, we saw lockdowns in the form of travel restrictions, which was very vague in the form of a lockdown. Now, with the Delta variant making its way through society, can we expect a so-called fourth wave? Can we expect another lockdown in the country?
Okay, yeah. So this discussion about waves comes up from time to time and with a very sensationalized reports, so on and so forth. Sometimes announcements are made even by officials and organizations. Let me tell a bit about the history. This idea of waves initially came with the 19th century Spanish flu, where initially there was a surge and then it went down. And after some time, after about 6 months, again another larger surge came and several people died. And since then, because when you look at the epidemiological curve, it looks like waves. And because of that, this concept came in. And now, because of the same concept, the waves are referred to in the COVID current pandemic also. We very frequently refer to the first wave, second wave, third wave also. When you superficially look at the epidemiological curve, I think Dr. Deepa is an expert on that area, you can superficially see that there are waves. But one thing we need to see is, still we really don't know the exact behavior of this virus. Still all of us are learning. So trying to make, say, labels based on maybe historical experience might be listed. I'll tell what are the reasons. One thing is, Sri Lanka actually never had a first wave. What was experienced in early 2020 and up to October were actually a series of clusters that were separated by time and location. A wave, like a tsunami wave, it has to go across time, across locations. But those were small clusters. If you really look at the epicurve that is prepared very well by the epidemiology unit, you can see small clusters and separated by time and space. The larger cluster actually started around 2020 October, September, October, when the Brandix and the fish market, the surge started. And after that, it went up and went down. According to WHO definition, if you have to define a wave, initially it has to go up, go down, and there should be a time period where the transmission is not observed or even low, which is epidemiologically measured by what is called the transmission rate, the reproduction rate, where the number of patients may not be zero, but will be consistently low. And then there will be another wave coming. Now, we haven't seen that situation in the current surge. Now, when you again superficially look at the epidemiological curve, you can see a dip. dip around maybe late June. But again, the fact is there was a reduction in the number of testing during that time period. So obviously the number of patients who were reported were also less due to some trade union actions, so on and so forth. So the superficial view that you are looking may be misleading. Another thing
So do you mean to say, Professor Dike, even right now as we speak, there is a reduction of the PCR test or even the rapid antigen tests that are being carried out in Sri Lanka at the moment? As a result of that, the numbers are not portraying the exact number that should really be on the card?
Okay, I'll come into that. What I was referring to that was the dip that you are seeing in the epidemiological curve. The dip between the surge in April and the current surge, you can see a dip. Dipping down to maybe 800 or maybe 300 patients, and then again going up to maybe at the moment close upon 3,000. That dip that you are seeing was mainly due to the time period of a trade union action where the number of testing has gone down, obviously. So in that way, if we try to superficially label this as a fourth wave, okay, obviously it looks a fourth wave, but then we are missing a fact. We are missing a fact that the reasons that has led to the current surge started maybe around April, so on and so forth.
Professor, if you don't mind, please, I just want to pick Dr. Deepa's brains on this.
Sure.
Do you agree with Professor Indika?
I think it is multifactorial. One reason is because trade union action was only 2 to 3 days, I think. But the country also, some travel limitations are there, restrictions are there. So it is multifactorial for the transmission also. Some kind of reduction of transmission also was there because of the travel restrictions. That also contributed. So I would say it is not only the one reason, there is multifactorial. Because
but do you think, Dr. Deepa, in a health perspective, what the government should do now is to limit travel restriction at least into provinces, restrict people's travels, restrict people from coming to the state sector or the government offices, and bring this under control?
The thing is, I don't strictly think the country should be like that, because what is the duration to reopen then? So the
but now
whole
let's look at Australia for an example, Dr. Deepa. Even right now, Melbourne and Sydney are on a lockdown, and they've been on lockdowns for several months, and they've been able to control the spread of the virus quite well. Can't we take a cue from them?
Yeah, for me, I think we can't compare our country with Australia, because they have the economy, plus economy, I would say. But our country, we are not a country like that. So we have to think about the country economy, the social status.
What reigns supreme? Is it health or economy?
I think that both has to go in balance. Health, to function health, the economy also should be there. So for me, I think it is the responsibility of everybody. We can't say that it is not the law enforcement or the government to do the travel restrictions or the limitations of the within provinces. So that will contribute or the supportive, but we have to see the behavior of people, how people, whether they adhere to this preventive measures. So when we go in the evening, so we see that people are not adhering to these preventive measures, or the people, those who are lot of people are together.
So what do you mean? What do you mean, Dr. Deepa, when people are talking about the fast transmissibility of Delta? Does that mean that the Delta variant is airborne and short distance in terms of droplets?
Still, it has not proven scientifically as airborne. It is identified as highly transmissible, and the virus load is high. So when the virus load is high, it is spreading quickly to others. If we are having super spreading situations, like a lot of people are together and having close contacts with each other, then it will transmit to a lot of people, creating the very critical situation.
Also, Dr.
So that is what we are experiencing today.
Dr. Deepa, just to ask you now, a lot of people believe that some vaccines don't answer to the Delta variant. Is there any truth in this, in a scientific point of view?
Still, it has not very proven by and not given the scientific evidence by WHO. So they have asked to give the vaccination, whatever the vaccine available to give the vaccination. And also regarding this efficacy or the effectiveness that we are talking about, I would say the WHO also asked, and we also know that we can't compare and say that, because earlier also this is already discussed. One vaccine, it says 95%, another vaccine says 89%, another vaccine 78%. So we can't compare this vaccine efficacy and come to a conclusion that this vaccine is good for this virus strain, or this vaccine is not good for this virus strain. If it is not scientifically proven, we can't compare. Even for just in general also, we can't compare the vaccine efficacy of COVID vaccine from one to the other. There is a particular reason for that.
But Dr. Deepa, even though we may not be comparing here in Sri Lanka, around the world, governments around the world are comparing, because they're already making announcements saying, okay, if you want to travel here, whether it's for work or for education, then you must have one of these vaccines. If you have this vaccine, then we won't let you in. So imagine that you're in the position of someone who had to, you came back from a job that you had, let's say in the Middle East. That's where we have the bulk of our migrant workers. You're now waiting to go back to your job. Maybe whether it's a skilled or unskilled, you're waiting to go back to your job. You've taken a vaccine, let's say Sinopharm, that this country is no longer accepting. Can you then take another vaccine on top of that?
Not
if you've
yet.
already taken your both doses of Sinopharm within that 1 month period, now you're ready to go back to work, but your employer overseas is telling you, sorry, you have to have either Pfizer or Moderna or AstraZeneca. Is it safe for that person who needs to go back to his job to take one of these other vaccines, given that he's already taken?
Still the mix and match is not proven, except Covishield and the Pfizer.
So what advice can we give to people?
There is no
like
travel ban actually. They can go, that is supportive to quit the quarantine period. So when they reach there, that is why they are requesting that vaccine. It is not to, there is no restriction to enter into the country.
But many of the people who are waiting to travel like that, maybe you'll have a minority who are in high-skilled, high-wage jobs where they can afford to quarantine. But many of the people who are who are waiting to go back as migrant workers, they're not in that bracket. So for them, it's a matter of no income, or it's starvation or get the right vaccine. So what advice can we give to those people? Should they be waiting to get a specific vaccine, or should they go out right now and get whatever vaccine is available?
Yeah. Now the thing is, Foreign Employment Bureau has already started, those who have not vaccinated, to give the particular vaccine, whatever the country they asked to give. So that provision is there now. It is being given. So the question you have asked already taken. Yeah. So there is no way to get the other vaccine now at the moment. But they can go to that country. They have to be quarantined.
If they can't afford to pay for the quarantine, then they have no recourse.
I think I'm not sure what kind of quarantine practice do they have. Some developed countries, yes, they have to pay and be there, but for some
or you
kind
have to get the employer to pay for the quarantine.
Yeah, there may be some system for them to pay for the quarantine. Not the person has to pay. There may be some other system also. So otherwise, there is no travel restriction.
Dr. Deepa, I just want to add something to what Nadeem said. He made a good point, because most of the countries, now I work in the export sector. I work for a tea company in Sri Lanka. So what happens is, certain countries don't allow you to visit them if you have got the Sinopharm vaccine. You have to have either Pfizer, either Moderna, either Covishield, or either AstraZeneca. And if not, they don't allow you to travel to their countries. Now that is a problem, because if the government goes on a rampage saying, get the Sinopharm vaccination, people would not even go through the proper system or the proper line or the proper queue to get the vaccine. They will definitely go through other means to get their vaccinations done.
Can I explain that?
Yes,
there is no travel restrictions. They are not refusing to entering into the country.
I'll tell you a classic example. Iraq, for an example. I tried to go to Iraq. And I want to go with one of my colleagues at work. He got the Sinopharm vaccine, and he could not travel. He can't travel because he has the Sinopharm vaccination, and they are not allowing people to come to that country.
Israel, there
even
is a
even a
specific
country like Germany, for an example, same format. If you've got the Sinopharm vaccination, you can't travel to those countries unless otherwise you have a booster.
No, what they ask is you can go to that country. There is no travel ban. You
have
can
to stay
go,
for
but
40
you have
days
to
quarantine.
get their vaccine again.
Yeah, again,
That is
and
what
you have
they
to stay
say.
for 40 days quarantine. How
Yeah.
practical is that? You know, no company in Sri Lanka are
That is
going
the
to pay
thing.
that 14 days of quarantine on top of going and trying to seize business for the country to make sure that we have foreign earnings that are flowing to the country, isn't it? So the government.
That's the economics question. I don't
No,
think
but
Deepak can answer that.
the
technically,
system is
yeah.
slightly flawed. Now that is what I just want to add to what Nadeem said. You know,
Dr. Bhatwantula, just very quickly, the last time you were on the program, we were talking about the importance of clarity in messaging, and we commended the job that is being done by the Health Promotion Bureau to ensure that messaging is going out in all 3 languages across all your social media platforms. But one of the matters that you said that you would raise with the authorities as well is to ensure that you have a seat at those press conference tables where announcements are being made by the task force head or the operations center head to ensure that messaging at these press conferences, which is through which the majority of the country are getting their COVID news, that the messaging is coherent, comprehensive, and clear. Has there been any progress on that? Has there been a push to better resource the Health Promotion Bureau, or are you now more involved in that decision-making process with the task force and the operations center?
Yeah, as far as the Health Promotion Bureau is concerned, we have our regular news briefings 3 days a week. So we had a plan to include Tamil language summary at the end, but when we discussed with the stations, they always prefer to get their own translation ongoing, while at the first moment the first speaker speaking in their own newsrooms, they do the initial translation into the Tamil and using. So because of that reason, we had to give up the idea, and they were not really particular that we give a Tamil translation at the end. But some of the English-speaking stations wanted us to give a 2-minute summary at the end of the Sinhala discussion, so we are doing it right at the moment.
Dr. Bhatwantula, we were also talking about mixed messages coming from the one hand the health authorities, and then the other hand the people in government, let's say the executive arm of the government. Because as Shamir mentioned at the beginning of the show, the health authorities right now, and even individual doctors who are sharing their stories on social media, saying that the situation right now in the country is dire, that it could get out of control if precautions are not taken. But at the same time, whilst the health authorities are issuing these cautious messages, the government is opening up public offices and has opened up interprovincial public transport. How do you reconcile these two very different messages?
Yeah, but first what you said, some of the doctors, especially the clinicians, they are giving dire messages. I mean, you have to look at from their angle. They are seeing patients day out, day in. So they are seeing the worst of the cases, and it's quite natural them to be alarmed. And the ministry, we would be looking at the total picture altogether. So what is what you said about mixed messages. So when it comes to COVID-19 messages, and especially data, what we always prefer and we always suggest that everybody follows the data issued by the epidemiology unit of the Ministry of Health, and that's what we do at the Health Promotion Bureau. We always take their numbers, and the other operations center in the Ministry of Health, they are taking the initial source from the EPID unit, and even at the task force they are using the same information. So I believe when it comes to the numbers, there should not be any mixed messaging. But of course, even if you look at our reports, we have a 2 p.m. Data and 10 p.m. data. Yeah. Of course, it will be different. So, as far as numbers are concerned, I don't see any opportunity for mixed messages. But when they interpret, and with their scope of expertise, when a clinician is interpreting, it would be a different message. Yeah. When a public specialist or an epidemiologist interpreting, it could be a bit different.
Dr. Ranjit, when it comes to announcements regarding vaccinations, telling people where they need to go, who is responsible for that?
Yeah, we have a system of 26 districts, health districts, and each district we have a regional director of health services. In addition to that, we have in the 9 provinces we have a provincial director of health services, and the EPID unit, which is distributing the vaccines. They are always linked with that provincial director and the regional director. And in addition to that, they have a regional epidemiologist. So he would be the key person, and distributing the resources, instructions and guidelines is through that channel of command or channel of distribution. So if in a district, let's say in Gampaha district, vaccination centers, the numbers and the places and the timing should come from the Gampaha district authorities.
The reason that I asked this question, Dr. Ranjit, is that I know of at least 2 cases in the past 2 days with this, mainly with this AstraZeneca second dose, where people have gotten appointments through the ICTA portal, but when they've gone to the specific location, one was at Werahara and the other one was at Homagama. At Werahara, they were told that this is the wrong location, you have to go elsewhere. And at Homagama, the person was told that, I'm sorry, we're out of vaccines. The Homagama one was today. And this person has, I think, just returned home. So, isn't that indicative of a problem when it comes to ensuring that correct information is getting out to people regarding what they need to do, what procedure they need to follow in terms of getting this second AstraZeneca dose? Because right now it seems like whilst vaccines are being administered at breakneck speed, that it is a little chaotic.
Yeah, I think we have to understand this is a race against time, and we are fighting against the time to combat the virus. And especially when you consider the people who have got the first dose of AstraZeneca and are waiting for the second dose, even the minutes would count to them. So the ministry and the government was very keen to deliver the vaccine second dose to the people as quickly and as early as possible.
But then if that's the case, when someone comes, let's say they've taken an appointment.
No, let me finish. So what the message was delivered from the ministry, including the ministers and the state ministers, was, wait, over the 7 to 10 days, we are delivering you the second dose of AstraZeneca. The places will come, we will announce initially, don't come running on the first day itself. Both ministers said that. So, but again, even to facilitate that, people who come on running, that's why a center was been running for 24 hours. So rest assured, each and every 465,000 people who got the first dose will get the second dose of AstraZeneca, and after that only the balance will be distributed to other districts.
Subject. Now, Dr. Bhatwantarava, there were individuals who got the first dose of the Covishield in February. They are being administered with the second dose now. How effective is the second dose going to be?
Yeah, it's very effective, because US, UK, they produced the research publication even after 47 weeks of the first dose. The second, administering the second dose, you will get even a better response. But there's the small window of care should be given, because the time period is extended between the first dose and the second dose. The opportunity to catch the disease is high in that period. Right. Yes, so, that is accepted. So, Professor Indika, but delaying it won't affect the immunity.
Right. Professor Indika, now we've opened the doors for tourists or even Sri Lankans who have got the 2 doses of Pfizer, Moderna or AstraZeneca, Covishield, Sinopharm to arrive in the country. If they've got the 2 doses, they just have to sit for a PCR test and they can return to their homes or so on and so forth. However, how effective is this process going to be? Because let's say this particular person is exposed to a COVID-19 patient who has the Delta variant or any other variant per se 2 days prior. So he does the PCR test 2 days after, and based on what you all said before, that is not effective because the period in which you have to do the PCR test is after 5 to 10 days. So he may be negative at the airport, but probably will be positive and be a carrier later on. So now this is a problem.
You are referring to the vaccinated or
Vaccinated.
Yeah, I mean, one thing about vaccination is it prevents severe disease, but it doesn't prevent you from being a carrier or maybe carrying the virus in the nasal cavity and then transmitting. That possibility is there. And also when it comes to certain vaccines like maybe Sinopharm, to get the full antibody response, you might need about even 2 weeks after the vaccination. So those variations are also there. So
mustn't the government, as a response to this issue, do an exit PCR after 5 to 10 days to make sure that this person is fully cleared?
Yeah, exit PCR, I think it's done.
No, it's not done. Right now, they don't do it. I know someone who came from overseas. He was not told to do an exit PCR. He was just told to stay for 10 days at home, and then he could go wherever he wants. However, even that now is not there anymore. You just can walk freely after you are thrown out of the airport.
Yeah, that
not thrown out of the airport.
That decision came quite recently, about maybe 1 month ago.
Around 3 weeks ago.
If you have got the full doses of 2 doses of vaccine, you don't have to be in quarantine. You can basically go home and then basically you can move around. Probably that needs some kind of caution and revision at this moment, because I mean, with the current situation, so on and so forth, probably it needs some revision, because it may be rather inconvenient for those who come from other countries too, but at the same time, when it comes to the spread of the disease in the country, yes, you need some caution, because having the vaccine doesn't mean that you will not be transmitting the disease. That is correct.
Dr. Miru, I actually want to, this is an area that not a lot of people are talking about, but given that the Olympics are also happening now, I think it's important that we discuss it. With schools being closed now for almost 2 years, except for those sporadic intervals, we know that not all students excel academically. And I'm sure as a mental health professional, you'll agree that sports and games play a very important role in the mental health of teenagers, which is your area of specialty. What can we see now? We haven't had the John Tarbert senior athletics meet now for 2 years. Cricket matches, rugby matches, football matches, swimming, etc. Multitudes of sports that children engage in, where they excel in, and through which many students go on to build careers, and which they rely on their final years of school, those performances. They don't have those opportunities to do that anymore. How important is it that the sports authorities in the country act now to restore some semblance of normalcy activity? Is it advisable to do so?
So I will give you 2 examples which are completely different to each other. So the first example is, there's a student I have seen from an elite school in Colombo. His grandfather has played in a sort of like a big match, and father has played in the big match, and his dream as a little kid was to play in this big match. At his home, in his room, he has the pictures of his grandfather and father playing this game. So all his life, his dream was to play this. Now he has excelled in the same sport and was at each age level he excelled, and he was selected to the team, but unfortunately 2 years there were no sport. So his mental anguish is so much, he went into a frustration, depression, he needed treatment. He didn't have any other problems. He is average in academics, but his main goal is leadership, being with team members and learning from that. So one day he will be a leader and contribute to the society. The other example is that there are certain famous schools in Sri Lanka for volleyball. They excel in all the age levels in Sri Lanka, especially in the western coastal regions in Sri Lanka. So there's this school, due to the COVID pandemic, due to the severe economic difficulties and probably mental health issues, 4 fathers of kids have committed suicide. So these kids are in the volleyball team. So at home, the mother is crying, the grandmother is crying, everybody is crying because the father has died. He is the sole breadwinner. So the students are pleading to the principal. The principal called me and told, please let us come to the school and play one volleyball match because our hearts are burning. Everybody is crying at home. I can't be at home. Please let me come to the school for once so I can wear the school t-shirt and play the volleyball. So because they don't have access to individual classes, counseling, or seeing a private therapist or anything like that, their only way of psychological healing is coming to school, wearing the school colored t-shirt and playing volleyball. So these are very significant impacts. So this kind of loss of opportunities to play sports is going to have lasting effects. So there's no answer because I know all the other experts told that how the condition is in the country. So at least maybe selected sporting events, maybe after both teams are quarantined, like for 14 days they remain in one place, they are quarantined and they can play the game. Maybe special events, I think should be allowed because you know how a little kid dreams for, it's not 2 years of practice, it's 10 years of commitment in a child's life. So we have to consider some sporting events to be played.
So
that is my opinion.
Dr. Deepa, we see now, based on what Dr. Meru is saying, now we've seen that in certain apartment complexes, housing schemes, etc., gyms are open, swimming pools are open. In this backdrop, shouldn't the government also, if these facilities, recreational facilities are open, shouldn't the government also take steps to ensure that school sports are restored?
School sports, I would say that we have to think of how to open the school first. I think the strategy has to be open the schools at the initial stage. So children would be very happy, and I think he also would agree that their mental health will be supported by opening the school and with the meeting colleagues and the interactions with teachers. So I would say that that is what because now the vaccination among teachers is already carried out. So planning to open the school gradually. So strategy has to be very carefully and a planned way. The schools need to be open, and then selected sports, I would say, so can be organized in a way that without having high transmission, maybe some little changes can be done for some sports events. So in that way, can open for
Dr. Deepa, what was the
sports
thinking when the
activities.
government opened public offices today? Because we know a graduate, after finishing his or her graduation from a state university, will be in the ages between 25 and 26. However, the government's vaccination drive begins from 30 upwards. So there is a group between 25 and 30 who are in the vulnerable bracket. So what was the mentality? Did the epidemiology unit suggest this to the government, or did the government take an upper hand as they do always? And because there were protests carried out across the country, they want to put a full stop. If people can protest outside, why can't they come to work? Was that the mentality of the government?
This time, I think it is not the health decisions, only health decisions, or the only government decisions. In this event, this outbreak situation, we have seen that it worked as a team event, I would say. So different stakeholders got together and took decisions. So I think it is the different, the recommendations must have come not only from the health, maybe some other experts also were there to take the decision. So I think it is a decision of a collective decision. It's not the, I can't, I will not say it is from one party, the decision of one party. So it is a collective decision.
Dr. Gamage, I want to take you back towards a question that Nadeem posed as well, particularly about these schools. And for the last few weeks, we've seen quite a discourse on vaccinating teachers as a matter of priority, which was started by the health authorities. But like Shamir said, we still don't have vaccinations available for people below 30. Where is the guarantee that if you do open schools after vaccinating teachers, that you won't have clusters forming within students? Is the epidemiology unit considering that? Is that a consideration when offering this directive or recommendation that we can potentially open schools after the teachers are vaccinated? Is this a concern?
Yeah, there is a possibility. So that is why all the precautionary measures need to be taken. For teachers, it is not limited above 30. All the teachers above 18, the vaccination has been given. For that is the community, the generally above 30. So vaccination coverage achieved near 80% by now. So the accelerated vaccination program is ongoing at the moment to vaccinate the other rest of the above 30 also. At the same time, vulnerable population, even it has gone down to 18 years. 18 years of age.
Dr. Batuantulava, just to move on from what Dr. Gamage was saying, in your role in the Health Promotion Bureau, particularly given the level at which the pandemic is right now within Sri Lanka, do you think that on a confidence level, that parents, from your understanding at least, will be satisfied enough with the arrangements if the teachers are vaccinated, but the vaccines are still not available to students and schools were opened? Do you think we'd see the participation they anticipate?
I think we have to look at the total picture. Now we are battling against an unknown disease, and by little we are learning. And we are lucky to have other countries which they have gone through the cycle before us. So starting from the highest age bracket, they are coming down to a vaccinate. So even in our country right now, it's the 30 and above, but specific age groups, we were vaccinating 18 and above. So the moment the 30 and above is completed, we would be getting into 18 and above. So by doing that, we would be completing about 60% of the total population, and which is a fairly good enough of a level to restrict and cut down on the transmission of the virus. That is the expectation. And looking at the other countries where they have vaccinated sometimes 12 years and above. So as the disease moves, as the cycle completes, as we complete the vaccination program in the country, we should be in a better position to make a decision on this matter. And we know that the disease transmission and the severity is not that high among the young kids below 18. That's why we don't have enough evidence also from other countries. But of course, we have to look at the kids who are having some other comorbidities and vulnerable situations, whether we can identify them as a specific group and vaccinate. I think the expert committee in the Ministry of Health is looking at this, and I'm happy to say that the Ministry of Health is looking at all these potentials and options in advance and planning accordingly.
Right. Professor Karunatilaka, sticking on to this, and I think Shamir raised this concern, particularly this age group between 30 and 20. Of course, certain sectors within that age group have been given the vaccine. But what you do see is this segment of society tends to be the most mobile. They tend to be the segment of society that you see mostly in these urban areas, on their feet, so to speak, and also in office spaces where physically they are required to be there. But this whole thing about vaccinating age brackets, it's not just in Sri Lanka, is it? It's a global practice.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it all depends on the factor that the supply is limited, and therefore you have to prioritize. And then it depends on what are your priorities or objectives in prioritization. For example, is your target to reach the herd immunity? That means you need to go for a very large scale vaccination, and also you need to have very large supply on a regular basis, which is not practical at the moment. Other objective could be, do you want to prevent the severe disease and then the mortality and morbidity? In that case, you have to target on the risk groups, like maybe the health professionals who are at the front line, or maybe with the elderly groups who are in the in the, say, the comorbidity, so on and so forth. Yeah. So when it comes to the younger age group that you are thinking about, yes, I mean, that problem is there, that if you want to get them working and schooling, so on and so forth, you need to think about vaccinating them. That could be
Define herd immunity.
Okay, yes, yeah. I think now this is a concept in epidemiology. I think Dr. Deepa is very much expert in this area than me. But just to explain it simply, what is meant by herd immunity is when a particular percentage of the population gets the immunity for a particular disease, then others who don't have the immunity, they also don't get the disease.
At least how many people should be vaccinated in the population, if that's the case?
It varies actually. It varies from the disease to disease. If the disease is transmitted very rapidly, like maybe chickenpox and so on and so, like smallpox, so on and so forth, then you need to reach a very high level of herd immunity, because
example,
like 95%, 98%, so on and so forth. So similarly for COVID also, considering the rate that it is spreading, then the assumptions or the estimates, we only have estimates, the estimates for the herd immunity can be ranging from 80 to above. And now, currently with the more maybe rapidly spreading variants, the assumptions can be even more, like over 90s.
So Professor Indika, in Seychelles, which was supposed to be a model for herd immunity and the vaccination drive, which stood between 80 to 90%.
Correct.
Right now, the numbers are increasing once again.
Exactly.
And
correct.
They have been vaccinated with the Sinopharm vaccination.
Yeah, they have
majority of it.
Yeah, correct. Correct. Yeah,
so
correct.
So what is the reason behind this? Now you are trying to achieve herd immunity.
Correct.
And a country like Seychelles has already done it.
Yeah.
But they are in limbo.
Very good. Yeah, I think this is a very good example that you should not be going by numbers alone. You have to really look deep into the numbers. Now, if you take Seychelles, which is a small country, because of the small population, they have managed to get larger percentage of their population, over 75% of their population, with either Sinopharm or Covishield. Yeah, then there was a surge that was appearing, correct. Yeah, but one thing we should not be forgetting is that vaccine may not be preventing you from getting the disease. What is meant by the efficacy is that it prevents you from getting the severe disease and the mortality. So even if you get the vaccine, still it is possible to get the disease. Still it's possible to get the disease. And again, now when you really look at those numbers in Seychelles also, then you realize among those also, the number who got the severe disease is more among those who haven't got the. And even among those who have got the vaccine and got the disease, their severity of disease is much low. So when you really analyze the numbers, it's always good practice to go into the details and analyze. I think it's a good lesson even for the current situation. Rather than just going by the numbers that are observed, you have to really think and analyze. Now, Dr. Batuantadawe was also saying very correctly that observation from the hospitals. Now, a lot of patients are coming and a lot of getting oxygen dependent. Very correct. I mean, that's our clinicians are experienced, and that's something that we have to really concerned about. That's correct. But at the same time, I think there's a need for a rapid situation analyst to find out what exactly the situation is. That is where the public health decision making is, because what we see by the numbers is only part of the story.
Right. So, Dr. Deepa, when we speak about the efficiency rate and the efficacy rate of the vaccines in question, Sinopharm records 79% against symptomatic infections and is highly effective in preventing severe disease and hospital admission. What about AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Moderna? What is the efficiency rate?
All three vaccines you have mentioned, they have looked for severe symptoms, hospitalization, and death.
Right.
Then that efficacy rate goes above 80%, 85%.
So let's say, Dr. Deepa, there are a section of individuals, because we saw today the Director of Health saying that they will launch a survey in Colombo to ensure those who have not got vaccinated already. There is a section in Colombo and even in the country who have not got any of the vaccines yet. How dangerous is this situation?
Yeah, there is a risk for them to get the disease at the same time they're spreading the disease. So not only to identify those who have not got, the reasons for them also. I think that at the field level, that survey includes to identify why they have not.
No, because there is a notion, Dr. Deepa, in society, I don't know whether Dr. Bhatwantura would agree with me, saying that Sinopharm vaccine is less effective. We don't want to get the Sinopharm vaccine because it's made by the Chinese. Now, this is general notion. And they say that the Moderna, the Pfizer, or even the AstraZeneca is much more efficient. Is there a truth behind this?
That is what I was trying to explain before also. This efficacy you can't compare because the Pfizer vaccine, they have looked at severe disease hospitalized patients and death. So, Sinopharm, as you very correctly said, it is for symptomatic. Symptomatic means even mild symptoms they have considered. After giving the vaccine, if anybody has got mild symptoms, they have considered that. So, is a vaccine they have looked at only the people, those who have got the severe disease leading to hospitalization. So, even severe disease means if they have stayed at home, they have not considered. Severe disease required hospitalization and death. So, if the Sinopharm also considered for that tent, that is why I said that clinical trials have stopped at different levels, looked at the different levels of the spectrum of the disease, they have looked at different stages, so the different endpoints, I would say.
So, Dr. Bhatwantura, what is the role of the Health Promotion Bureau on this front to create awareness to the general public? I know programs like this open the doors for the individuals who are at home to know the importance of getting vaccinated, but there has to be a ground level mechanism from the Health Promotion Bureau to keep everyone aware of the importance of getting the vaccination, isn't it?
Yeah, we are looking at a three-way communication process. I mean, we communicate laterally to our colleagues and other doctors, and we give the advice, especially with the epidunit, there are regular and periodic guidelines and instructions leaflets. We tell our doctors in the field what they should be telling to the community. And at the same time, we are doing public communication from the national level also about the vaccines efficacy and how they should get it and the availability.
Right.
So all these together coupled with the availability, we have to look at the scenario, and we were giving all the available data, and as correctly Deepa pointed out, the efficacy of the vaccines against the severe disease and the death is comparable across all the vaccines.
Let's talk about, Dr. Bhatwantura, what about people with allergic reactions? What is it? How must they go about?
So it has been in our guidelines issued by the epidunit, it has very clearly written down. So anybody who needed hospitalization and medical treatment for a previous allergic condition is considered a severe allergic condition. So they have to get the vaccine in a hospital facility with the emergency management setup. So those, they have to be referred to a doctor, and they have to decide to whether to give the vaccine, and if it is to be given, where. So others who have minor allergic conditions, they have to be evaluated by the medical officer and made the decision on individual basis.
I'm posing this question to you, Dr. Bhatwantura. I probably am a little bit selfish here, but I have a twin brother who has allergic reactions, and despite the fact that me pressing him to go and take the vaccine, he doesn't do it. He says, I'm scared because if something happens to me, how are you going to look after my family? So there is a question. It's not only affecting my brother, my twin brother, it's affecting majority of the people in Sri Lanka who think that because of an allergic reaction, they don't want the vaccination. So if that is the case, what must they do? What is the, tell me from point number 1 to point number 3 as to how can they, what steps must they adhere to?
So we are looking.
What must they do first?
We are looking at the problem in two angles. I am looking at the service provider, and your brother is looking at the customer.
Absolutely.
So it will never match. So what the advice I can give you is, if anybody has a history of allergy, please talk to your primary caregiver, medical officer, doctor.
So let's say if that caregiver is at a private hospital?
Yes. So whoever is a qualified doctor should evaluate and give a ruling on that person.
So what must the customer, as you said before, what must he do? He goes to a doctor, gets an evaluation done by a physician, and what would the physician do in return?
So the patient or the customer or your brother has to tell all his allergic histories,
right.
How it happened, when it happened, whether he was hospitalized, does he has a diagnosis card, whether any medications were given, injections were given, tablets, so everything has to be provided to that physician, and he will make a decision whether he should be getting the vaccine, the particular vaccine. If he has to get it, where he should get it. Most likely he has to get it in a tertiary care facility.
Yeah, the problem is, Dr. Patwanthurava, a private medical practitioner can't suggest to a customer or a patient where he or she should get the vaccination.
No, this is a special condition. This is not a normal person. This is a person who has an allergic history. No, it has to be dealt like that, individual cases. So we can't give a blanket cover.
What must the doctor do?
Doctor, there is a...
Is he supposed to contact the MOH?
No.
Or the PHI in the area? Or
no, it's a physician. Deepa, there is a guideline, right? Specifically for all the allergic conditions.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, the thing is, if he is living around Colombo, the National Hospital, there is a vaccination center open. So emergency physician is there under his care. The vaccination under observation, it is being given. Otherwise, whatever the general practitioner can refer to the nearest tertiary care hospital or the general hospital, and most of the general hospitals, this time the vaccination clinics have been opened.
Because now Dr. Sadhuruwan Bandara got his first dose as the AstraZeneca, this is on social media, and then he got the second dose as the Pfizer because he said that he got a clot in his brain as a result of getting the AstraZeneca. How serious is this, Dr. Deepa, with regard to clots and all that? Let's say there is a polycythemia patient, a stress polycythemia patient. Then what must they do? Must they also adopt the same format of getting a vaccination?
The thing is, whatever the disease conditions they have to provide to the medical officer who is running the clinic. So all the clinics, medical officers, qualified medical officers are there. So every clinic, even at the field level, there is a medical officer.
So even at the Vihara Mahadevi
yes, medical officer
there is a medical officer who you could elaborate your position. So let's say what happened to the 93,000 Pfizer vaccines that arrived in Sri Lanka a few days ago?
Last night or the previous?
Last night.
Last night, that is for the second doses.
The second dose only?
Continuation of the second doses, because earlier we have given first doses, so now it is for the continuation of the second doses.
All right. Deshan?
Yes, I have a question to Dr. Muir. Now, we talk about the statistics of the virus and the effects it has had, but a lot of people have sort of like overlooked the mental aspect of it, like especially students who are like doing in the final stages of their degrees, and also people who just finished their degrees waiting to get jobs. Now, there is a common sense of uncertainty. And I see most of my friends, and also including my sister, who's in the final, who's at the final stages of a degree. This uncertainty seems to be affecting them mentally a lot, and this has affected their productivity. And also, if you look, many countries like the US, UK, Bangladesh, there have been rates of dropouts from schools and universities. That rate is increasing. So I don't know if such a study has been conducted in the country, but like. According to a professional, what is your advice to a student or someone going through this phase of uncertainty? How do they cope with it?
So, with several UK universities, in Sri Lanka are conducting a study on the emergency child and adolescent psychiatric presentations during the pandemic. So, we are comparing data from 2019 to 2020 to 2021 about the presentation of children with depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, educational problems, and screen addiction. So, from the preliminary data, we have not published the study yet, from the preliminary data, it seems like there is a 20% increase in emotional problems. Emotional problems means children coming they are tearful, they are angry, they are frustrated, they are depressed, they are anxious. So this is common for children, adolescents and youth who are in the universities. So this is a significant problem. So this can lead to, one thing is poor concentration on the degrees or the educational programs they are doing. Because when you are distressed, you can't concentrate. So their attention to detail and attention and focus to what the teachers and lecturers are teaching are very poor. So the overall effectiveness of the degree program is now become low. The next thing is when they are anxious and depressed, they may have sometimes even self-harm thoughts. So that can lead to significant harm to children, and the parents are also worried because they are afraid when the child is crying, should I go to the hospital? On the way, will my child get COVID? So they are afraid to go to the hospital to seek mental health opinion as well. And also the impact on the university students is immense. So I have spoken to a group of university students from different faculties. Many of them are severely frustrated, especially coming to internet access for online education. Some university students are spending most of their day on a tree just to grab signals, and if you miss one lecture of a module, you can't understand anything beyond that. So they are extremely frustrated. So this frustration is there. Fortunately, there is capacities for stored lectures where they can access later, stay until late night and access the lectures later. So there has been some provisions, but we need to do something urgently to stop this menace.
Also, doctor, how long can we expect until people especially get their, not the physical health, but the mental health to normalcy for us to resume productivity in employment and education? Like, how long will this rehabilitation period last? Let's say if we go to a complete opening of the country and the virus threat is a little lower.
So from all over the world, because the COVID is still not finished, people have assessed what has happened in the previous pandemics to the mental health. So what is shown mainly from the Western countries, because during the previous pandemics, the epidemiological data from our countries are limited. From the previous decades, it has shown that immediately after the pandemic, there's anxiety, depression, frustration and anger. But in the coming decades, there's academic underachievement, emotional frustration and long-lasting mood problems like depression, long-lasting. So how will this mental health impact last? I'm certain it will last very long. And there'll
Dr. Miyuru, are you concerned that we may be facing the possibility of a lost generation of Sri Lankan children due to the COVID-19 pandemic?
So we have to do something to stop that happening. So that is what I'm saying.
You're saying it is a possibility, it could happen.
So we are not certain because the physical parameters are easily measurable. But the mental health parameters, it's difficult to assess by a scan or a blood test. You need an expert in front of a child spending a significant time to assess the mental health impact. So what we can say is from the other countries in the world who are coming out of the pandemic, there has been positive signs because unlike the adults, when the adults are depressed and frustrated, they stay on being depressed. But the children's brain are what we call neuroplastic because it can change during the experiences. So maybe, obviously there are going to be negative impacts, but also they are going to have a significant amount of learning from this experience, what we call the enduring changes in personality. So after a pandemic or a significant, psychologically significant event, we get some emotional resilience to us. So for example, when we go and practice in other countries, especially in mental health settings, so usually people of Caucasian people ask us, you have seen that person who have went through that huge trauma, but you didn't seem very upset. Why is that? Because when we are compared to psychiatrists working in other countries, that question is frequently asked from me, why are you not upset? Why are you not crying? Because other people in the team are crying hearing that story from that patient. Because as Sri Lankans, from the armed conflict, tsunami, youth uprising, there's emotional resilience we have gathered. That is why we say sometimes
that
Is that
depends on
emotional
person.
resilience or emotional stunting?
what I can say is sometimes there's a saying that certain group in this country forget things in 2 weeks. That certain group of people forget.
But is that
yeah.
I mean, you look for when there is like a tragedy, you look for like a certain emotional response from people. Obviously, not everyone responds the same. People grieve in different ways. People respond to tragedies in different ways. But you look for certain indicators. Am I right? So when there is an absence of response, isn't that also like a concerning matter? I mean, what you're describing as emotional resilience could be viewed as emotional stunting. Isn't it?
Yes, obviously there is what we call the lack of empathetic response. Especially if a person has been in a traumatic experience for a long time, you can't cry every day. You have to stop being emotional. That means you become emotionally blunt. So when the time comes to actually show empathy and be kind to another person, you are incapable of doing that. So that will happen to some people. But if the parents and teachers can intervene, we can stop that.
But bringing back to our topic of COVID-19 and like the prolonged closures of schools, I mean, it is accepted, isn't it, that social interactions is very important in building empathy in young children especially. In the absence of meaningful social interaction, right, it's very difficult to empathize with a computer monitor or a computer screen. In the absence of this sort of meaningful social interaction, do you feel that we may have a generation of children who could be lacking in when it comes to feeling emotions like empathy?
Yes, so recently I saw a teenage girl. The complaint from the parents was that the child is not eating. So when I asked the teenage girl, why are you not eating? The answer is that I want to be like a person in this certain music band from Korea, right? So you would expect this child to be coming from maybe Colombo 7, Kollupitiya. No, this child is coming from Monaragala, from a village where both the parents are farmers. With much difficulty, by selling their harvest, they have got a smartphone for this child to do the online education. What the child has done using the phone is that watch music videos of this K-pop band. You know, I'm not going to mention the names. So according to their body image, they are very thin, have a certain body image. So this girl from this rural village want to emulate this music band, so she has stopped eating. So her body image or body perception of, so she now believes without being thin and slim, I'm useless because my idols are thin and slim, so I want to be like that. So the mental health impact, if the parents are not monitoring, so I asked the parents, why didn't you monitor? So they don't know how to check the internet browsing history, they don't know what is YouTube, so how you can help? So there need to be some mental health education programs through the TV, because almost 80% of all the households have a television or a radio. So you as a media organization as well, there's a responsibility to educate the parents about these hazards.
Also, Doctor, on a final note, just to ask you, like, what is your professional advice to the people, the youth and everyone in the country? How do we deal with this uncertainty? We don't know when the country will open. We don't know when we'll go back to normalcy. What is your professional advice? How do we deal with this uncertainty?
So the first thing is, to overcome, there should be acceptance. So if we lose a cricket match, first thing to do is accept the defeat. If we don't accept the defeat, we can't introspectively look at ourselves and find our faults. So first thing is acceptance. So even when you lose someone you love, the first thing is moving away from denial, accepting that you have lost someone. The next is, yes, there is going to be significant impact, then do problem solving techniques. So what are the problems I have? What are the solutions I have? Then go by each of them and find the best solution. Then
we have a few questions, Disal, if I may interrupt you for a second here. We have a few questions from our viewers. An individual who has an autoimmune disease is posing a question saying, that she has got her vaccination in March, and so the second vaccination should have come in March, but she has not been subject to the second vaccination because AstraZeneca was not available at that time. Now she's going to take the vaccination this week. If that is the case, must she be subjected to a third vaccine after a few months, Dr. Deepa?
Not at the time, because now the immune development, there are antibody development as well as memory cell development. Now antibody development, antibodies can come to a little reduction, but memory cells will be more mature and antibodies will be developed when they get the second dose. So there is no need of going for a third dose at the moment. The global evidence also there that the duration doesn't matter. Whatever the first opportunity they get, they have to get the second dose. So for the moment, there is no recommendation to go for a third dose for her or the people, those who have delayed.
At the moment?
Yes.
There is no evidence to prove that claim. Dr. Deepa, when we spoke about Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and other vaccinations like Moderna, you said that it prevents severe or paying the ultimate price, death. So you can prevent all these if you get the 2 doses. Am I right on that?
That is for all the vaccines.
All the
it
vaccinations
is there,
at the moment.
But they are.
However, Dr. Bhatwantara said that while it's important to get the vaccinations in play, the Sinopharm has also proven that it is effective, because a lot of people say that Sinopharm has a 98% efficacy rate against COVID-19 for those who are above the ages of 60 and those below the ages of 60. All these are in the air in social media. People are discussing about it. Social media has become one of the most spoken about topics as far as COVID-19 is concerned. So what are your thoughts on this, where people disseminate information probably that is not relevant, probably which is relevant, however, which is not accepted? Now, as I said before, when we started off the show, I said people are talking about gargling and steaming to be the way out of COVID-19, but Dr. Deepa said, no, it's not the case. We are fighting a virus. A virus cannot be defeated by gargling or steaming. So important points. So what about the Health Promotion Bureau's activity or role in this situation to not spread false rumors on social media?
So one of the principles we follow whenever we are talking about highly technical matters like this efficacy or efficiency, we always refer to the original documents, original publications, and we provide the links through our publications on the social media. That's one of the basic principles we follow to avoid miscommunications and incomplete communication. So anybody who is reading our material on the dismantle some of these myths in the social media.
I think, Dr. Bhatwantara, what is important is for even the public to get the information from the horse's mouth itself, like a recognized public authority where they can disseminate the proper information, because a lot of people with regard to this gargling and steaming, they are symptomatic, they're at home gargling and steaming, thinking that the virus will go away, Dr. Deepa, unfortunately, because social media is giving the wrong impression, and that is where the government has to pitch in. And your role, Dr. Bhatwantara, has to be more vivid because of this reason, to disseminate the right information to the public. So the public also has a responsibility to get the right information and grasp them and then disseminate those information correctly. So Dr. Deepa, today was one of the worst days as far as COVID patients are concerned. 2,400 plus COVID cases have been reported today. Nearly 63 deaths have been reported. It's quite a bleak day. So right now the trajectory shows the number of cases are rising, the number of deaths are rising. isn't this a reason to be cautious and of concern?
Yes, of course, it's a time to, because everybody should be very vigilant on preventing the transmission. So this alarming sign, when the cases are increasing, the transmission is there. So partly it is contributed to probably the change of the strain, the Delta virus strain also may be contributing for high transmission. So I think it is a collective responsibility by everybody.
Dr. Deepa, do you think that we should impose some form of restrictions right now until the vaccine rollout is completed to a higher percentage of the population? Do you feel that the government should impose some kind of restriction in the short term?
The thing is, now at the moment we have reached up to a good level of the
vaccination.
Vaccination. At least the thing is, at least one dose above first dose, at least one dose above 30 years is now reached around 87%, so 88% already by yesterday. So that is above 30. But if we take all together, whole country as 22 million, it has reached up to 46%. So that's
at least one dose.
At least one. So second dose is now completing. So most of the second doses, if we take the total population, it has reached up to 10% now. So second dose is completing. So
you're saying that restrictions are not necessary right now?
I would not say that restrictions are not necessary, but by putting the restrictions, how long we have to put that? So that is the issue. I think by adhering to all the preventive measures, we have to go to the normalcy, the normal functioning of the country. So we have experienced different stages of restricting, and still the transmission continue. So then why? And also at the same time, we have seen that people are not adhering to whatever the advice is giving. So I think that is what we have to implement.
So Dr. Deepa, I have another question from one of our viewers. I'm getting a lot of questions today on our Facebook page. You can join in the conversation by logging on to Facebook and liking our Face the Nation page and Newsfirst Face the Nation page, and then posing your questions directly, so I can pose it to the panelists. So the next question is to Dr. Deepa as well. This viewer has registered for the Pfizer vaccine in July and then received a message stating that she would get the vaccine in due course. However, up until now, they have not received an update yet. And she just heard you saying that the 93,000 vaccines, Pfizer vaccines that arrived last night was for the second dose. Where does it leave this individual in question? What is the predicament now for her? Is she going to get the Pfizer vaccine, or is she not going to get the vaccine?
I'm happy to know that from where she has taken the vaccine. Is that from?
No, she has not taken the vaccine yet.
Yeah.
She has registered for the vaccine in July, and she was told she has not taken the vaccine yet. She has registered for the Pfizer vaccine in July, and they've told her that she will be notified later, and she has not yet been notified. However, when you spoke about the 93,000 vaccines that arrived last night, she's saying, would she even get an opportunity to get that vaccine now onwards, or must she resort to another vaccine?
Yeah, we have to think of now. This looks like she must have registered to go abroad.
Probably go overseas.
Because otherwise, the Pfizer vaccines for the community, it has been given in Mana and Putlam area. So other few doses have been given to the students, those who are going abroad. So she must have registered through that, but maybe waiting. So still the second dose.
So what must she do? What must she do?
I think she has to wait until the decisions taken for first doses in due course when the vaccines are coming in.
So what happens to the 700,000 vaccinations, the AstraZeneca vaccines that are arriving in the island on Saturday, because there was news saying that there was another 700,000 arriving in the island. So who's going to be administered with this now?
Yeah, but the thing is, the additional vaccines out of the 700,000 already received also, first doses started in Kegol. So I don't know about the future 700, what would be the decision by the Ministry High Authorities and the task force decisions.
Who decides this?
That is, there is a national task force.
Right.
So that includes several stakeholders, including Ministry of Health, political authorities, all the other, because I'm not in that country.
Is the epidemiology unit represented in the task
Yes.
force? It is.
Yes. Ministry high officials also there. So it's a collective decision.
So our viewer is saying now that she is from the Colombo district and she's intending to travel overseas. So henceforth, she wanted the Pfizer vaccine. So anyway, Professor Indika, opening of schools, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah.
Because we heard
yes, correct. I mean, Dr.
your
Muru
student,
has gone into
Dr.
Yeah.
Muru Chandradasa
Exactly.
articulating about this from
Exactly.
a psychiatric point of view. But
Yeah,
in your opinion,
Yeah, true. I mean,
how do you look at it?
We have to look at this as an issue that we need to take immediate measures. I suppose we need to look at from different angles. I mean, there's no one solution. For example, we have to look at what are the measures to prevent spread. If we start schools, what are the measures to prevent schools, the spreading of the COVID-19 within schools, such as the adherence to the preventive measures, and also vaccinating teachers, that is happening at the moment, and also vaccinating students, so at least at the priority basis. That is number one. And also how to start schools gradually and stepwise. Are we going for the areas that is the spread is minimum, like the rural areas, or are we going for schools that have a smaller number of students, like that? Then the revision and adaptation of school curricula, that is very important, because the current situation, like Dr. Muru mentioned, can we get the current situation experience also as a learning experience, and also can we give the same amount of content that was given previously for even for O levels, or do we need to reduce the amount of content areas and identify the essential areas only? So revision and adaptation of the new normal situation, and also the distance education, because we have been speaking about the inequity, so on and so forth. So how to get the maximum quality of distance education while ensuring equity, and also maybe combining that with the electronic media with equitable access. For example, the online access may not be available for everyone. Only about, say, just over 40% have the online access. So what about others? Can we use the other mass media, electronic media, or even radio in a meaningful way, or even printed material? So how to maximally utilize distance education? Then finally, how to overcome the stress and burnout? How to introduce maybe like sports activities in a gradual way and other activities, and even before they start, say, online teaching, what are the activities that they can do to reduce burnout? So all these things, I think we have to go for a multi-pronged approach. Actually, during last year at SLMA and this year with the OPA, we have done a lot of work. Dr. Muru was also there, and there was a detailed set of recommendations that was submitted to the Minister of Education 2 days ago. So hopefully they will look into those recommendations and take measures. But the final message is you have to look at from different angles, and I think you need to take immediate measures on this.
So those who want to engage with us in the conversation with regard to the topics that we're discussing right here on Face the Nation, you could go to our Facebook page, like us, and directly send in your questions to the chat. I could also take up those questions with the panelists who are joining us this evening. However, we are running out of time for the moment, so we close the Q&A sessions from our journalists at the moment. We're going for a short commercial break. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is COVID-19, fighting COVID-19, the global pandemic. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back.
මේ රට වට බැඳි මහා චලකඳ අපේ රටේ වටිනාකම දිනෙන් දින ජාත්‍යන්තරයට කියා පානවා.
ගංගාවල තියෙන ඉතාම වටිනා පිරිසිදු ජලයට අපද්‍රව්‍ය එකතු කිරීමක සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙනවා.
මේ මහා පරිමාණ විනාශයට විරුද්ධව ක්‍රියාත්මක වීම කියන එක ඉතාම අවශ්‍යයි. එහෙම ක්‍රියාත්මක වුණොත් විතරයි මේ වෙන මහා විනාශය නතර කිරීමේ හැකියාව තියෙන්නේ.
පරිසරය වෙනුවෙන් ඔබ යමක් කිරීමට කැමති නම් ඔබ වෙනුවෙන් අප ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්න සූදානම්.
රන් අඩපැය කාලේ බුද්ධිමය ආමන්ත්‍රණය.
The Gammada Universe.
රට පුබුදන හඬ එකතුව නැගිටිමු ශ්‍රී ලංකා අනාගතය සූදානම් කරන ගම්මැද්ද තක්සලාව වෙර දරන හඬ සරය Voice of ගම්මැද්ද අරමුණ දිනන පෙරමුණ වීෆෝස් ගම නගන මග ගම්මැද්ද සවිය සිරිලකට උරුම සන්නාම ගම්මැද්ද සංස්කෘතික කේන්ද්‍රය බෝසත් ගුණැති මිනිසත් සමාජයකට ගම්මැද්ද ගම්සවිය අපේ රට අපේ මුහුද පිළිබඳ ලොව හමුවේ තබන ගම්මැද්ද ජාත්‍යන්තර සමඳතා පිළිබඳ කවුන්සිලය අතීත ලාංකිකයින්ගේ අද්විතීය ද්‍රවතාක්ෂණය අපේ වැව හෙට සොයන නායකත්වය ඔබයි ගම්මැද්ද ජාත්‍යන්තර නායකත්ව මධ්‍යස්ථානය
The Gammada Universe.
In the final round, but I am saddled with this question because I've been getting this question over and over again from a few of our viewers. Can saliva of a positive patient in water in a pool maybe infect other swimmers?
That is not proven because there may be some dilution also, And in other countries also it has not been proven. From pools it has transferred to others. So there may be a lot of factors. There may be some, yeah, that's what I wanted to tell.
Right.
Chlorination as well as the dilution.
Right.
So
Okay. So I now move my attention to Dr. Ranjit Bhatwantudava, Director of the Health Promotion Bureau. Your final thoughts.
Yeah, I think we all agree on few things here. The number of cases is increasing and the reported number of deaths also has increased. And we know that Delta variant is in our community and it's spreading. So it's a very cautious time for all of us, which re-emphasizes the value and the strength of COVID-19 preventive activities, like the 4 or 5 things we say about the prevention: wearing a mask, not going to crowded places, avoiding touching your nose and mouth with dirty hands, keeping your hands clean, and avoiding crowded places. These things have to be followed irrespective of the circulating strains, or irrespective of whether we have limitations or travel restrictions or the other. And again, I want to emphasize, as some of our clinicians have been expressing, the number of patients who are needing oxygen and higher treatment has been increasing, and the government and the Ministry of Health has been planning and strategizing how to provide for the needs of these patients, and all the potential scenarios have been worked out, and the plans A, B and C also is in place in events of oxygen needs, and they have been worked out, and plans are in the process of expediting and happening. And but we have to emphasize again, the cases needing this specialized care is going up, so people have to exercise caution even more than the other times, because we know that Delta variant is fast spreading and it's causing more serious conditions. And again, they want to mention about the testing. The capacity, we have almost 22,000 PCR a day, and if you look at the yesterday's figures, we have done almost 18,000 PCRs. It is about 1 week ago, it was a little bit less because the reported number of cases are less, the number of contacts is less, so the number of PCR testing also has gone down, but now again it's going up, and it's we have to look at again about the PCRs and the RATs tests are being done. It's never been reduced. So with these things, I just want to re-emphasize that all of us have a responsibility for ourselves, our loved ones and our community to practice COVID preventive behaviors. Thank you.
Very quickly, Dr. Bhatwantudava, do you think that our vaccination drive, our COVID prevention strategy is working at the moment? Because numbers are increasing.
I think we have to look at the both sides of the story, because we know the Delta variant is in our country. The signs showing that it's spreading, and it's a fast spreader, about 70% more than the Alpha variant. So cases might go up. So it is indicated in our random sampling as well. About 2-3 weeks ago, it was somewhere around, positivity rate of the random PCR was somewhere around 6%, but now it's somewhere around 8%. Yes, so there's a slight increase of the random cases as well, and the cases with signs and symptoms. And as you correctly said, with the vaccination percentage, the proportion of the community who has the vaccine goes up. There could be a situation where the individuals who got the vaccine and getting the disease also could go up.
Right.
So with that, we have to be cautious.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bhatwantudava. I now move my attention to Professor Indi Karunathilaka, former president of the Sri Lanka Medical Association. Professor Karunathilaka, if you could start off saying whether there is a vaccine right now in the world that could fight all COVID strains or variants. Your time starts now.
Yeah, I don't think there will be one, say, one treatment or one vaccine. That would basically cater for all the possible variants or even in the future variants, because still we don't know about this virus completely, and also the situation is emerging. We don't know what's going to come in the future, what kind of variants will come. So no one can give a guarantee that there will be a vaccine that will be basically catering for all the variants, because vaccine action is dependent on the structure and the function of the virus. Yeah. So
your final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts. Thank you. I try to give a complex message maybe in a simple way. One thing is, I mean, Sri Lanka has been having a very good public health system with decades of experience. But one thing we need to remember is we are going through a pandemic. And in a pandemic means everything is not normal. Now today we have heard many things like some shortcomings, certain things that are not really, say, ideal. Yes, possible. I mean, certain things that are related to maybe testing, maybe quarantine, maybe isolation, maybe vaccination. There may be situations that are not ideal, and that may lead to a lot of frustration. And also how individuals respond to diseases can vary, because that's how their immune system and the body system respond. So individual experience related to the treatment, vaccination also may vary. What we need to remember is we are having a public health problem. So ultimately it has to be a public health solution. True, there may be frustrations, there may be, say, not very pleasant experiences, so on and so forth. But what we need to focus is on the basic public health preventive measures, because the ultimate message is, it is not that if I get the treatment or the vaccine, I am safe. Not like that. If all of us can safeguard ourselves, can get the vaccine, then all of us will be safe. So it should be the message, like the public health message will be the ultimate one which we should be focused on. Secondly, the complexity. Now we have seen how complex the messages are. Say now, Dr. Deepa was nicely explaining, when you talk about efficacies, we think that we can compare between vaccines. But we know that when you talk about efficacies, how they were measured were different. The study populations were different, the time period were different, settings were different. So it's like comparing apples and oranges, but still we try to compare them. And also sometimes, now you mentioned about another media report about 98% efficacy of the vaccine. Again, a good example, because it was actually the researchers referring to the antibody formation. But what we mean by efficacy is something different. What we mean by efficacy is that if you get the vaccine, you have, say, 75% less chance of getting severe disease. That is different from 98% of people developing the antibodies. So we are actually talking about very complex messages, and we are trying to interpret that. Another example that we have given is, now today is a very special day that we have got so many deaths and so many numbers of patients. But again, having said that, there may be a danger in looking at the numbers only. I tried to mention that previously also, referring to the fourth wave and so on and so forth, because the deaths that are registered today may not be the infection that took in the same day. Maybe different days because of the presentation different, incubation period different, stay in the ICU different. So therefore, the number during one particular day, the number of deaths during one particular day might not give us much meaningful information. Similarly, the number tested positive today, it may not be the same number who got the disease the same day. There may be incubation period differences, there may be differences in the data flow, because all these things depend on the country's testing capacity. So one day's figures may not be exactly giving us the proper message for decision making. Right. What is more important is to study the trend over time and identify what is going to happen and make rational decision making. So things are so complex. Again, then what should be the simple message? Simple message is, stick to your basic preventive measures. Even if you have got the vaccine, stick to your public health preventive measures. If all of us are safe, then the whole country will be safe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Indi Karunatilaka. Dr. Deepa Gamage, consultant epidemiologist, Epidemiology Unit, Ministry of Health.
Yeah. Now, we know that we are facing a pandemic. That is why we all are talking. It is not only our country, the whole world is now experiencing different stages of this pandemic. So now and the other thing is there is no specific treatment for this virus, and also we don't know the epidemiology of the disease and the behavior of the virus yet. So every day we are experiencing different new things and different evidence to identify what kind of virus is this. And for that, now what we have to do? We are talking about this preventive measures. So all the preventive measures, I think we have already discussed and explained. What is the responsibility? It is not the health responsibility or the government responsibility. It is the responsibility of everybody in the country. So it's a collective responsibility and the social responsibility to adhere to all the preventive measures. So in addition to personal preventive measures like wearing the mask, keeping clean hands, in addition to whatever the exact preventive measures, because there is no exact drugs to prevent the disease or treat the disease, the vaccination is the only option we see to add to the other preventive measures. So vaccination also one option, but that is the only hope that we have now. So in the country there is a plan for the vaccination. Now about 30 years it is already started the vaccination together with vaccinating other vulnerable population or the vulnerable categories. Up to 18 years it is already vaccination given to other categories or the high risk categories, and for the other community now about 30 years it is already continuing, and the accelerated vaccination continued and expected to complete by end of August. And then the vaccination, there is a plan to get down the vaccine, but there is a big global scarcity. But we have to, as a country, we have to be, we have to be proud that because we have received 5 types of vaccine. It is true that people are trying to go for their selection of a vaccine, but our advice is whatever the vaccine available at your area, please take that vaccine if your age category has come to that. Now next step will be, it is going down to 18 years. So by the end of December, the plan is to, if the vaccines are available globally, the manufacturing and available the supply, government is trying to get it down to the country, whatever the effective vaccine coming to the market, so it will be getting down. So we have to be ready to vaccinate, and vaccinate is providing the vaccination from our side, and it is the responsibility for everybody to get the vaccine, and the next step will be that, and with the existing other evidence, the timely advices will be given on what to do. So my advice is, as a collective responsibility, while adhering to other preventive measures, take the vaccination as it is available.
Right. Very quickly, Dr. Deepa, if this variant mutates, can it affect animals like livestock?
Yes, it has been identified in most of the countries. It can go to the mammals and it can come back. So that variability has seen in some other countries.
Right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your thoughts and your views and your comments, criticism, as well as a way forward for Sri Lanka. Thank you very much, Dr. Muru Chandradasa, Dr. Deepa Gamage, Professor Indi Karunatilaka, as well as Dr. Ranjit Bhagwanthurao for joining us this evening on the show. Thank you very much, Nadeem. Thank you very much, Deshan, as well as Visal for joining us this evening on Face the Nation. Visal, today you were quite vocal about mental health and all that, and good. Nice to see some fresh blood gushing Face the Nation in terms of posing questions from our panelists. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. Good health is not something we can buy. However, it can be an extremely valuable savings account. Maintain social distancing, wear your mask, as well as wash your hands, even though you have got your 2 doses. So remember that, keep in mind, Sri Lanka is in a very dire situation at the moment. Your health is important, not only to you, but those who are around you as well. Take care.